Hello, my friends. Roselli coming to you once again on the Not Fox News Network. Boxofsunglasses.com is the website. Email info@boxofsunglasses.com. Twitter @RobRoselli. Facebook Rob Roselli 1. Today being Tuesday, March 28th, 2017. And events keep spiraling out of control. You got this Fukushima nuclear meltdown over in Japan, which has essentially turned the Pacific Ocean into an aquatic death zone. Okay, you're not hearing about that. China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, ISIS, the McCain, American neocon, psychopathic created ISIS, etc., saber rattling, threatening the United States with annihilation. Okay, now Russia. That's not like the United States isn't provoking all these nations. Article out today, Saudi Arabia, China, Russia dumping the U.S. dollar. Without getting into too many technical details, there's any number of websites out there. You can get into the nuances of the technical details, but the premise is basically simple. Okay, if the demand for the United States dollar plummets, which it's doing, and people catch on to what a scam the U.S. dollar and in fact the U.S. economy, and by extension the United States itself, really is, then it becomes obvious. I mean, they're dumping so-called Federal Reserve notes like hot potatoes, and what happens basically is there's no demand for United States currency. So basically what happens then is interest rates need to go up to attract people to invest in the Federal Reserve notes. So it's basically it's a death spiral. Okay, it's a circular death spiral as we're on the verge of. We're probably in fact in it already. Actually, it just hasn't manifested itself yet. They're still giving electric shock therapy or whatever it is to the corpse that is the United States economy. I mean, Trump, what he's doing is a little bit, throwing a couple of sandbags against the tsunami. He may be slowing things down a bit, but basically, so-called Obama threw him a hand grenade for an economy, and it's about to explode in front of Trump. Okay, let's just be frank. Okay, nothing. The stupid healthcare bill, yay or nay, whether it passes or not, whether this happens. Ford builds a couple of plants. So what? What's that going to do? A couple of billion with a B or whatever. I mean, we're trillions. We're 20 trillion with a T in the online deficit. And depending on which source you read, as high as 200 trillion with a T in the offline deficit, or what's called unfunded liabilities, which basically means the United States government has taken money from the mortgage payment to pay the electrical bill, or whatever analogy you want to draw there. But on a national scale, that's basically what's happening. So we have that going on. Of course, the ongoing geoengineering, vaccine, the death jabs known as vaccines, and actually that's covered briefly here, okay, in this book, my second book, The Un-American Genocidal Complex. Okay, in this case, what I cover is they spiked the smallpox vaccine with the AIDS virus, okay, killed tens of millions of sub-Saharan Africans, which Charles Darwin, the theory of evolution, said was okay because they're savages and not really worthy of living, with the white, progressive, liberal elites, Harvard, Northeastern, banker, Goldman Sachs, criminal elites. If that sounds a little ironic, it is. All these useful, idiot, a-hole college students and these so-called street radicals that are doing the bidding for these guys don't know how stupid and ignorant they really are. But be that as it may, the point is that the issue surrounding this nation is the walls are closing in is basically what the point is. Okay, as predicted in Matthew chapter 24. All right, which we started to go over last week, and it's a lot to grasp, a lot to get your hands around. So let me just review my 3 basic principles. Keep this very simple. I know people are busy. There's a lot of information, not even all of it true, coming hard, coming fast these days. Nonsense, not to mention the essentially the little training wheel, or whatever you want to call it, okay, like little hamsters in a cage that the quote Federal Reserve System has us all running on, okay, which is a system of perpetual debt that can never be paid off. All it does is eat away like a financial cancer on what was the greatest nation in the history of the world, as it doles out quote free money, but it comes at a price, as we're all going to find out in the not too distant future, as I just mentioned. The whatever deficit you want to look at, the online, which is the $20 trillion, which is the quote official number, okay, or the real deficit, which is north of 100 trillion with a T now. The United States economy is something like $16 trillion a year. And that includes all spending, welfare spending, government spending on nonsense, and people buying stuff at Starbucks and healthcare and all this stuff. So even given that, even giving the extreme latitude that the United States economy, economic activity, whatever they call it, has any real meaning, the debt is literally, okay, 10, let's just say 10 times the annual economic income. So it's impossible to pay off ever. Plus, it's accumulating interest. Every day that goes by that this problem isn't solved, it just gets worse and worse. I mean, Obama is blamed, and he accelerated and certainly accentuated the process, but he certainly is not the one solely responsible for it. Okay. And again, Trump's not going to solve it, but let's just quickly review the 3 basic principles to keep this thing simple. I didn't mean to get off that, but basically, number 1 is the Bible is the infallible word of God. That's the only way to grasp and make sense of the quote conspiracy. There's no other choice. You can read all the conspiracy theorists of the world, the David Icke, the Webster Tarpley, the Jim Mars, all these kinds of people, and I've read them and listened to them, and they have some good information, but at some point, the logic, you come to a logical conclusion, you get to the end of what they're saying, and it just doesn't, so what? David Icke is saying, George Bush is a reptilian, or whatever that guy's saying. Look, I don't know. Okay, that's what he says, fine, whatever, dude. I don't know if it's true, okay, but the guy's, I don't want to get into that right now, okay? He has some good information, and some of his other stuff is just complete nonsense. All right, but the point is that with so much information out there, you can read about all these guys, you can read all their books, you can get them on Amazon, they're big, thick, 2-3 inch books, 500-600 pages of information, but so what? Okay, you can't even convince most people of what a scam the Federal Reserve System is. At its core, it's a purposefully designed thievery. It's outright thievery. Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, and Rothschild, and the rest of them just came and basically hijacked the United States economy back there in 1913 with the Federal Reserve Act, and have controlled the governments of this nation and, in fact, the world. That means wars, depressions, death. Okay, so the point is that the quote conspiracy is so vast. The only way to get your arms around it is to know and understand that the Bible is the only thing that ultimately explains it all. The extent of the evil, okay, that's out there. Okay. Number 2 is Israel, national Israel, okay, is not God's chosen people. All right, and I'm not one of these anti-Semites, Jews are responsible for everything and this and that. I'm not saying that, but from a biblical standpoint, anybody that sits there and tells you that ancient Israel, national Israel, are God's chosen people, you must support Israel, you must pray for them and send their money to them, and they're God's chosen people, and we must forget everything Christian and focus on Israel. Like they're either stupid, ignorant, or they're just an outright fraud. All right, it's that simple. We've gone through the verses in the Bible. I mean, starting really with the 3rd chapter of the New Testament, where Jesus' number 1 witness, John the Baptist, calls him a generation or a brood of vipers in Matthew chapter 3, and basically says if you don't become a Christian and produce fruit in keeping with repentance, you'll be burned in a lake of fire. You'll be burned in hell. Okay, and tells them don't think because God don't think because you have Abraham as your father that you're special. I mean, God can raise up from these stones children of Abraham. And the concept of stones, what that really means, we went over that on the last show. Okay, and by the way, all the YouTubes are posted on the site. Again, it's boxofsunglasses.com, not Fox News Network. You can go on and look at all the old YouTube videos, okay, where we go over the stuff that I'll reference. But that would be I guess that would be last week, so that would have been March 23rd. Know that was discussed, but again, today being March the 28th. But anyway, so that's number 2. Israel's not God's chosen people. That segues into number 3, which is there's no doubt that the United States is the mystery Babylon of the book of Revelation. All right, no doubt. And current events are pointing to that. Okay, if you look around at the economy, okay, the helter-skelter, our society that's being ripped apart at the seams, thanks to the divide and conquer mentality of our Federal Reserve criminal overlords. It's George Soros, Kissinger, Brzezinski, the rest of your northeastern white liberal elites. Can't say David Rockefeller anymore because he's dead. Now, David Rockefeller may have thought, he found the elixir of life and, some kind of recombinant, genetic engineering or whatever. The Rockefeller Foundation was into all that stuff. However he thinks he may have, made himself immortal with some kind of transhumanism or modification. Guy's dead. He's as dead as George Washington, and he's got an eternity that means never-ending room of darkness to look forward to. Okay, so I hope he enjoyed his life, his short life here, vapor trail. But James chapter 4. But anyway, these people, these were the commanders of the good ship mystery Babylon, and they're about to bring this economy crashing, brought to its knees and worse, just crashing down in the not too distant future. Okay, followed by maybe a quick peace treaty. Okay, with maybe a revived Obama, Pharaoh Barry running it out of the United Nations. Okay, and I'm still looking at the exact scenario, but it'll be something along those lines. Trump will get steamrolled, okay, like an ant, and in front of the quote conspiracy. He'll hold things off for a while, like he's doing, but woe be unto the Christians. I mean, the real Christians, not these goofballs like Joel Osteen when that happens. Okay. But the point is that the mystery Babylon is the United States. Okay, economic collapse, nuclear war, and like an ambush. Okay, and all this sort of fun stuff. Okay, and that's spelled out on the Mystery Babylon USA link on my website, and you can read through that line by line. I don't really want to go off on that right now. Have gone into that in past shows. Again, you can go onto the YouTubes and watch them there, or you can read about it on my site, boxofsunglasses.com, and which unfortunately is becoming a very accurate portrayal of current events and soon to happen current events. Okay, what's going to happen? Okay, so in other words, we're not going to have the stupid. You're not going to have the Great Tribulation. The mark of the beast. Look, you might get them, and that seems to be a trend right now. You might get towards the end here, you might get an attempts to microchip people as the insane maniacs running the world, try to figure out what to do next. Okay, so yes, you may get that. The so-called Great Tribulation, which is just an amplification of the tribulation that's been going on for 2,000 years, so it's a matter of semantics, and that's it. Okay, but there's not going to be some 7-year tribulation with a rapture and all these nimrods and these morons arguing about a post or a pre or a mid-tribulation rapture like it's going to be true. It's all nonsense. Okay, I'll just speak to this real quickly. I mean, we'll cover this on a future show. There will be a rapture, but it's going to be, once that happens, okay, that's it. It's game over. All right, that's the 6th seal. Once God reveals himself, then that's it. Show's over. Okay, there's no more opportunity to be saved. Okay, if you're still around. As a matter of fact, that language is is inherent in Matthew chapter 24, and we talked about that, and we'll talk about it again. This concept of a one-time event, of a sixth seal kind of scenario, where once God reveals himself, again, it's game over. It's not a rapture, then, Satan's going to come and rule for whatever it is, I don't know, 1,000 years, and after the 1,000 years, there's going to be another war, and then the Jews are going to be, it's all a bunch of crap, okay? And I'm going to go on the record as saying that the Bible, these people are trying to interpret the Word of God in the Bible in a chronological and physical way. And it's not a chronological and physical book. I mean, yeah, there's some events that are chronological, but if you go down that road, you're just going to keep hitting contradiction after contradiction. Nothing's going to make any sense, especially in light of current events, okay? You can't try to apply a four-dimensional approach to, especially with time, to an existence, to a reality, like in the book of Revelation, that exists out of our four-dimensional world. It's just not going to work, okay? And that's why, again, you have so many people out there just keep getting it wrong time after time, all right? And nobody's perfect, myself included, but at least I'm on the right track, I would have to say. But be that as it may, last time we talked about stone temples, okay, and the concept of what is, stones. We talked about the stones a little bit, if you can read about in Matthew chapter 3. We got into a little bit of the Knights Templar and the great cathedrals around the world and what they really are, and the hewn stones and all this sort of thing, and the ashlar stone of Freemasonry. Okay, what the Freemasons are trying to build, what's called a hewn or an ashlar, or a constructed stone. Okay, it's symbolic of a society. Okay, Freemasons see themselves as building blocks of, Solomon's now mythical but was a physical temple. Okay, and that's one of the core teachings of Freemasonry. So when Jesus says, and they ask him, they say, "Tell us." Jesus said, "See not all these things, verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down." He's not talking about a physical temple, all right? God doesn't dwell in temple made with hands. Okay, that's spelled out in Acts chapter 7. What Stephen is talking about God, and it's basically Acts chapter 7 is basically a Cliff Notes version of the Bible, really, and really specifically the Old Testament. You could read through that Acts chapter 7, but anyway, in there the first martyr Stephen says, what stone temple will you build for me? I don't dwell in temples made by hands. And we went over what temple really is, what the living stones are, which is the body of Christ, which is true believers. Okay, and that's spelled out in 1 Peter chapter 2, amongst other places. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, I believe. I want to say 1 Corinthians chapter 12, 2 Corinthians chapter 6, but really 1 Peter chapter 2 really explains the concept of what the temple really is. So therefore, again, when I say, these people that are, saying, well, before any of these events of the Revelation can happen, they must rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. It's all a bunch of crap. All right, I don't know how much clearer the New Testament could be with this concept of what the temple really is. And so therefore, to have an abomination of desolation, you don't need a stone temple in Jerusalem. And in fact, it contradicts Scripture, okay, which is why I believe Pharaoh Barry, by placing himself between the Freemasonic columns of Jacob and Boaz at the 2008 Democratic National Convention, he put the abomination of desolation for all to see. All right, because that guy's still around. He ain't going anywhere, by the way. That subversive, that slick salesman, okay, that talker, Pharaoh Barry, is still around, subverting what's left of this once great nation. But anyway, so just to kind of say what that, explain, just a quick review with that language. really is referring to. And then don't forget the next line, 3, you know, and he sat upon the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, what shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and at the end of the world?" Now remember, again, this ties into what we were just talking about, okay, with the 6th seal and, you know, the second coming. When Jesus comes back, there'll be a rapture, and then that's it, okay? Because look at this language, okay? What shall these things be? The sign of thy coming and of the end of the world. Okay, now some people may say, well, it's an extended great tribulation period. No. Again, well, once he comes again, that's it. Remember, at the end of Matthew 23, what does Jesus tell the Jews who have just given themselves over to Satan? Remember, their leaders had made a covenant with the son of perdition, with Satan indwelled in the form of Judas Iscariot. He said, "You shall not see me again till you say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord." So what he's saying to those people there who will be resurrected right before they get thrown into the lake of fire, yeah, you're going to see me again, but then it's too late. Okay, you shall not see me again. Of course, that implies a second he's right in front of them when he's saying that. Just like here. Okay. When they say, you know, what shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the age and the end of the world? Okay, so those two events are basically the same thing. Okay, his coming and the end of the world. All right, there's no grace period after that. Right now is the age of grace. All right, and I keep saying that. I keep coming back to that point. That's very important. Okay, so they're coincidental. Okay, but let's go on. And Jesus answered and said unto them, "Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many." Okay, so that's very interesting. Okay, Lucis Trust, or Lucifer's publishing company over at the United Nations. Okay, it's an actual organization. Okay, it's located at 120 Broadway, 120 Wall Street, right there in Mystery Babylon or New York City. Okay, it's called Lucis Trust. It originally was Lucifer's publishing company, and it's part of the non-governmental organizations, or NGO, of the United Nations. Okay, so when I say the United Nations, okay, part of the un-American genocidal complex, the Rockefeller-founded United Nations is nothing but a bunch of death merchants and devil worshippers. I'm not saying that to be funny. I'm saying that to be literally true. These people do, in fact, worship Lucifer. It's in the name, okay? But be that as it may, you go to some of their meetings and you get some of their literature by a woman by the name of Alice Bailey, who channeled the so-called Ascended Master. Okay, by the way, it's the name of the Ascended Master is the name I use for Satan in this book, Pleased to Meet You. Okay, again, available on my site. But anyway, so, and he called himself this so-called Ascended Master, or whoever Alice Bailey was channeling. She called him the Christ. Okay, if you go to their meetings, you get their literature, they call this unseen entity the Christ. Now you can laugh and it's funny. That's a big joke, but number one, the joke's on whoever's listening to this right now, because chances are, if you're an American taxpayer, you're paying for all this crap. Because who supports the United Nations? But mostly these suckers, the American taxpayers. Okay. And she's not the only one. Okay, this is covered extensively in section 3 of my book. Okay, this is available as PDF download. They Live, Great Society of the Undead. Okay, the undead, of course, being United Nations. You know, again, the uncapped pyramid, J.P. Morgan, Federal Reserve, cathedrals, stone cathedrals. Okay, just kind of quickly review some concepts. But anyway, in section 3 of this book, I go into great detail on some of the quotes of these so-called Ascended Masters. And another Ascended Master, by the way, is a gentleman by the name of Robert Christian, okay, or Saint Germain, okay, who contacted a woman by the name of Helena Blavatsky. Now, she was the founder of something called the Theosophical Society, which was a huge component of the modern New Age movement. Okay, so these aren't These aren't, this isn't conspiracy theory. This is basic historical fact. Okay, Helena Blavatsky was a huge stalwart in the modern New Age movement, and also, as well as the Nazis, okay? Her great white brotherhood and her racist beliefs. Again, it's all encapsulated in this. Well, all my books, but really in here, okay? Where the rubber hits the road. The rubber of Nazi and Darwinist ideology hits the road of reality. Okay, sorry, stupid white liberals, cannon fodder morons. Okay, look in the mirror. Take a look at one or two levels above you, who's funding you, and see how stupid you really are. But anyway, these ascended masters, okay, controlled people like Helena Blavatsky and Alice Bailey, who channeled these things, okay, which are doctrines of demons, okay, 1 Timothy chapter 4, and then this kind of thing, okay, seducing spirits, okay, I believe that's 2 Timothy chapter 3, okay, spirit of Antichrist, 1 John, okay, the book of 1 John and 2 John, right, talks about the spirit of Antichrist, all right, which is really the only place where you see the term Antichrist mentioned, okay, and it's referring to these so-called ascended masters, okay. The term Antichrist, again, is not in the book of Revelation. That's not an accident. But it all goes back to this thing, this concept of saying, there many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. Well, I've got 2 or 3 of them documented in my book, okay. Now, these 2 or 3 so-called masters or entities that call themselves Christ, again, think about this, influenced several of the biggest stalwarts of the modern New Age movement, okay. So you can kind of see how this concept of the doctrines of demons is infiltrating our society, okay, which is basically why we're on the verge of just a societal-wide breakdown and a helter-skelter, just anarchy, okay, all by design, by the way, okay. I don't want to go off on that. That'll be too confusing to try to explain right now. It'll be another tangent, but it's not an accident, okay. But again, so that's what he's talking about there, okay. And those are just small examples, okay. Well, not small, they're just a few of the many examples that are out there, okay. Then we get down to, for nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. That means in all places, in many places, and these are the beginning of sorrows. Okay, now here's an interesting line right here. Okay, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. So again, okay, this is why I say this concept of a great tribulation and this spiritual war, this war that's gone into another dimension since the death of Christ, okay, this is like Ephesians 6 kind of territory. He's talking in the year, let's just say 33 AD. I mean, there's different, when did Jesus, he started his ministry at 30 years of age, and most accounts he ministered for 3 years. Was he born in 4 BC, 7 BC? I'm not going to get hung up on dates, so I'm just going to say, let's just say, it's a quick aside, all right, 33 AD is when he's delivering this, and then he says, nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Then he says, then they shall deliver you to be afflicted. Okay, so he's talking to his disciples there. So in other words, it seems like these war and these famines and pestilences and earthquakes are already going on. Okay, this is what I mean. That you can't sit here and say, yeah, there's gonna be a manifestation, there's gonna be an acceleration of things as is happening now. But this language in Matthew 24 doesn't indicate that. It indicates that these famines, pestilences, and earthquakes are the beginning of sorrows. Then they should deliver you up to be afflicted. So now many of these apostles that he was talking to physically at the time were delivered up and afflicted in the Roman Empire. Okay, they were fed to lions. They They were burned in a case of Nero, I think it was, that took Christians and burned them as fuel for street lamps, burned them alive. Okay, and this sort of thing. All right, so that's when they're afflicted in the beginning of sorrows. Now, it's interesting. Now, he uses the word, for example, he uses the word famine. Now, we just run quickly to Amos. This is the Old Testament book of Amos, chapter 8. And I believe this is the famine he's referring to. He's not referring to a physical famine. Now, of course, you do have famine in the poorer nations of the world, a physical famine. I'm not saying that's not happening or not going to happen at the very end. Okay, is the world's food supply, like we mentioned at the top of the show, with the entire Pacific Ocean, basically just a bathtub of radioactive death right now, destroying the world's ecosystem. Okay, so we are going to get some physical famine here, but in this context, that's not. I don't think that's what Jesus is referring to. Remember in John chapter 5, he says, "Whoever shall eat my flesh and drink my blood shall be saved." And they say, well, how can we eat your flesh? A bunch of cannibals. So again, the biblical literalists have a real problem there, just like the Jewish Pharisees did. Okay, if you're going to take the Bible literally, then you have to believe that Jesus in John chapter 5 was advocating cannibalism. But of course, that's not what he was advocating. Okay, and that language is here. It's kind of hidden in here. In Amos chapter 8, let's just start with chapter. Let's just go back to Amos chapter 8. Now, I don't want to take this as a dissertation on Amos right now, but shall not the land tremble for this, and everyone mourn that dwelleth therein, and it shall rise up wholly as a flood, and it shall be cast out and drowned as by the flood of Egypt. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will, saith the Lord, that I will cause the sun to go down at noon, and I will darken the earth in the clear day, and I will turn your feasts into mournings, and your songs into lamentation. I will bring up sackcloth upon all loins, baldness on every head, and I will make it as the morning of an only son, and the end thereof as a bitter day. Okay, so that word bitter, okay, I believe that's just getting into the seventh seal of Revelation. Okay, again, skipping around a little bit, but just trying to, for those of you that are familiar with the language, okay, turning the oceans and the rivers of the world, okay, into wormwood and into bitter. Okay, so it's not a literal, necessarily a literal interpretation that works there, but if you go with the figurative, like the language here in Amos chapter 8, then things start to make a lot more sense. Okay, yeah, there will be a physical manifestation of these things at the very end, but then it's almost too late. Just like right now, it's almost too late. Not too late, but almost. But anyway, behold, the days come, saith the Lord God, that I will send a famine in the land, and not a famine of bread, nor of thirst of water, but of hearing the words of the Lord. And they shall wander from sea to sea, from north even to the east, and they shall run to and fro and seek the word of the Lord, but shall not find it. Okay. So that's the famine he's talking about, okay, because we have a famine for the word of the Lord. Okay. That's what's at play here. Okay, remember the Jews, their hearts are hard and their ears are dulled. Okay. This is language all throughout the Gospels and the book of Acts, by the way. Okay. I think it's Matthew 15 when the Pharisees approach Jesus, why do your disciples not wash their hands? And Jesus responds, well, Isaiah was right about you. You read the scriptures, but your heart is far from me. You don't understand me. Okay, and this language is reflected in Isaiah chapter 6 and Isaiah chapter 9. The two most prominent examples I can think of off the top of my head were Israel, they're having a famine of sorts from the hearing and understanding God's word. Okay, so they're not physically starving, but they're spiritually starving. Okay, and that's what's at play here. That's the bigger picture at play here. Okay, so again, you have to think about out of the box on some of these things. Okay, if you try to take them literally or try to, this is the way you run into problems. Okay, and it said these are the beginning of sorrows, and so then they should deliver you up to be afflicted. We just went over that. And many false prophets shall rise and deceive many. Okay, now many false prophets, and of course you had all kinds of con men. You had this Simon the sorcerer for a couple of early examples, in this Bar Jesus in the book of Acts. Okay, Acts chapter, I want to say Acts chapter 8 was Simon the sorcerer, and Acts 13, I believe it was Bar Jesus, but just false prophets. Okay, the Catholic Church, okay, is probably the most prominent. That basically took Christianity, the Roman Empire, at the, when it was on its way out. Constantine captured elements of Christianity, mashed it together with Egyptian / Greek / Roman paganism, and called it Catholicism. So these are the false prophets that shall arise and deceive many. Okay, and of course they're still arising today. Today it's way out of control. A lot of these jokers, all right, these so-called Christian churches, the World Council of Churches, for instance, or the Federal Council of Churches. Okay, well, communist front groups founded again. If you trace their origins back, okay, you come to those same money changers, Rockefeller and the rest of them, the foundations. Okay, these are false prophets who pull out certain sentences, certain verses of scripture, and use it as the entire truth, and that's not necessarily the case. Now, if you remember, if you go back to Matthew chapter 4, Satan knows the Bible well, and he was actually quoting it to, Jesus, who was the Word in flesh. Okay, the Word became flesh in John chapter 1. So there's the author of the Bible, and there's Satan trying to outwit him in his own, and the guy who wrote it. All right. But the point is, you have to be very careful, okay, because these false prophets, influenced by Satan, are out there. All right. In 2 Corinthians chapter 11, Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, and his ministers as angels of righteousness, or ministers of righteousness. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact language, but the point is that an angel of light, Lucifer, light, loose, okay, it's the root word. Lucifer's publishing company, Lucis Trust, okay, illumination, light, is starting to make sense now. Stone temple, hewn stone, derived from the Knights Templar, okay, predecessors to the British Royal Society, the Round Table groups, the Bilderbergs, your Federal Reserve crowd, your Skull and Bones. This language is starting to come together. Okay. Remember, United Nations, Lucis Trust, stones, okay, hewn stones, the anti-Ten Commandments of the Georgia Guidestones. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to, these are the people running the world. This is why the world is it is basically an insane asylum, all right? Because now you can see who's basically running the place, all right? As we careen down the road, we are an insane asylum. It's just it hasn't really manifested itself yet in real time, but it will, okay? Just look at the news and the nonsense that people are concerned about. Okay, you got Fukushima, you got pending nuclear war, you got an economy that's ready to collapse, and these ding-dongs in Washington are worried about, Trump and his advisors maybe speaking to some Russian diplomats, and people are taking, half the country at least is taking these people seriously. Not to get into politics, that guy can't stand most of it. But just as an example of how just the insanity, okay, collapsing infrastructure, insane wars. And this is what these idiots are worried about, okay. So anyway, I don't know, I've got off a little bit of a tangent there. I'm just making the point again that the temple, okay, and this gets a little confusing, and I'm going to go off on this, but again, the stone temple that these Freemasons are trying to rebuild can only be rebuilt after most of the world is destructed, is taken down in their minds. That's this phoenix rising from the ashes, this concept, okay? So when they show us their stone temples throughout the world, what they're showing us is a representation of what they think is their heaven on earth to be built by those that are in the know, that have the knowledge of the mysteries, okay, under their god Lucifer, Lucifer's trust. But 90% of us have to go for this to rebuild, okay, and it's going off topic a little bit, but this is what they're building towards, okay, which is why we're on the verge of just societal breakdown and war and economic collapse and chaos and all this other stuff. And you're seeing that reflected here, okay? And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not troubled. All these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And we just read this, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. So in other words, this has always been happening, but now it's accelerating. It's like an avalanche or a snowball going down a hill, okay? So it's always been there, okay? That snowball, just the concept of a snowball, something snowballing. It might be, a huge snowball at the bottom of the hill, but it didn't start out that way. All right. The false prophets we talked about. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. So in other words, you're just going to have callous people. All right. And that's our society. And again, you're starting to see that more and more. And a few weeks ago, we talked about the abortion movement in this nation and a so-called doctor by the name of Kurt Gosnell. Okay, this is a, quote, so-called doctor in the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, who was literally chopping live babies to pieces, okay, killing them alive. He was basically found guilty of murder, which is, I don't know, we use the word funny, but, if abortion is, it's not murder, then he should have been just convicted of practicing medicine without a license or medical malpractice. Okay, but the point is that this is, putting a baby's feet in jars and for a collection and snapping their spines after they're born and flushing them down the toilet and killing even a couple of mothers, because you have a couple of really college dropout and high school dropout hacks administering anesthesia to poor minority women that can't afford, abortions, but they still have the right to choose. And nobody cared. Very few people cared. So this is a nation that's callous. Okay. Now you take a baby and somebody puts it on video. You lock them in a car on a hot day and it's national news and all the imbeciles on Fox News are oh, that's terrible and this and that, and you get this guy down here in Philadelphia who was really just on a par with Joseph Mengele and the Nazis, okay, and not a peep out of the so-called free American press. Nobody cares. All right, so we're a nation that's callous. That's just a prime example of it. Just not to mention, just a general feel of what's going on in our society today. Okay, the love of many shall wax cold. There is none. All right, and that's just you could see it. It's here. All right, it's here. Trump is holding it back for the time. He's the eye of the storm. But he's at the end of it, he's just a man. I don't care how powerful he is or how powerful he thinks he is. He's not going to hold this thing back forever. This is a dam break that's about to happen. All right. I guess we can probably stop there. So, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. That's the next line. Okay. So he's talking to his believers then, and he's talking to the believers now, okay? Because unfortunately, what's coming once Trump is gone, which could be sooner rather than later, when the economy collapses. And by the way, just as an aside, maybe we'll talk about this on the next show. I'm hearing a lot about this 2018, Economist magazine by the Rothschilds, okay, who sat above Morgan and Rockefeller and Carnegie and the rest of them, okay? The Rothschilds, who had the old man back there, and around the time of the French Revolution, had a live meeting with one of the live manifestations of Saint Germain. Okay, or Robert Christian, who I'm calling the Antichrist, Satan incarnate. Okay, but anyway, I'm just hearing a lot of traffic about their magazine, The Economist magazine, the Rothschild-owned magazine, calling for in 1988, calling for a 2018, reset of the world currency and the phoenix rising out of the ashes, which we talked about a few minutes ago. Very interesting to me because, not to go off on a whole tangent right now, but 2018, the Freemasons, real quickly, they described their year zero as 4000 BC. Okay, and I believe that's based on the concept of, the biblical days unto the Lord is 1,000 years, as 1,000 years is unto a day, 2 Peter chapter 3. So be that as it may, they make 4000 BC their year zero. Now 2018 just so happens to be the year. What year is that then? It's the year 6018 or 6018 or 0.618. And what is that? That's the golden ratio. We talked about that on the last show. The golden ratio. Okay, what was the other golden ratio year? 1.618 or 1618. Let me just pull that out real quick. Just, again, there's that illumination. The all-seeing irons we talked about a few minutes ago, but talk about the Knights Templar. There's your stone temple that they're building, the Royal Society, the rose plus the cross, the Rosicrucians, the 18th degree of Freemason. But what do we see up top here? 1.618, the golden ratio. All right, you got little baby Lucifer flying around here with the serpent. Can the occultism of our leadership be any more obvious? Okay, and of course the O'Reillys and the History Channels and the National Geos of the world and whoever. Oh, that's just conspiracy theory. We're just no. They put it out there and make it so obvious, so then they can come out and say, "You see, we're not hiding this from anybody." Because people are so dumbed down and stupid, they don't know anything. It's almost like a mockery. But anyway, the point is the 1.618 specified here, 1618, 400 years is the Masonic year 2018 of 0.618. Now what's, again, the golden ratio? Without going, I could spend a whole show, at least an hour, just explaining that concept and probably just barely scratch the surface. But the golden ratio sits at the core of reality itself. Okay, you form a spiral from the golden ratio, but basically what it is, it's 1 over 1.618 equals 0.618. That's the only time that happens. That's why it's called the golden ratio. So in other words, it's the inverse of a number is 1 plus that number. And I hope I'm explaining that clearly enough. But just the point is 1 over 1.618 equals 0.618. Okay, so that's considered the golden ratio. Remember, it's if you take the Great Pyramid of Giza, okay, the Great Pyramid of Giza, okay, and you slice it in half. Okay, you do this. Okay, let's just say, let me just show this. Hopefully, I can just slice it in half. You do this, and you take this angle of 51.7 degrees. This base right here, if you make this 1.0, the hypotenuse, this right here becomes pi over 4, which is a ratio. Gives you the circumference of a circle. Okay. Okay, so if you take the vertical, the 3, the Osiris, and the 4, I don't want to go off on that right now. But anyway, let's just stick to the golden ratio. This base is 0.618, so you got 1.0 pi over 4, golden ratio 0.618. Okay, this pyramid dedicated to the sun god Apollo or Osiris or the Apollyon of Revelation chapter 9. Now next year, 2018, is in the Masonic system. His points is is the year 6018. 6.18. Just take the 0, because 0 is just a placeholder in numerology and the occultist. Okay. So you've got 6018, you've got 6.18 or 0.618. Now, just so happens to be exactly 400 years after 1618, which I just showed you, flying, with baby Lucifer flying around above the invisible college, the stone temple, okay, which is the stone temple that Jesus was really talking about destructing, by the way. This symbolic temple of our criminal Illuminati overlords in this symbolic society they're trying to build. He wasn't talking about this stupid temple in Jerusalem. That thing's gone and never to be rebuilt again. All right. So it's very interesting that the Rothschilds, the devil-worshipping Rothschilds, the red shield people, Rothschild means red shield, and if you look at their symbolism, you'll see all kinds of occultic and satanic symbolism right in their shield, okay? It's there. Now, their magazine, The Economist, is saying, Phoenix rising from the ashes, and I don't know if I can get a back copy of it, but it's 1988 Economist magazine, Phoenix rising from the ashes, saying in the year 2018, the golden ratio year of 0.618, we'll see the destruction of the world economy and the phoenix rising, or the new economy rising from the ashes. Okay, but it's not going to work out too good. It might sound good in theory, and the suckers might believe it, but what's going to happen when 200 million SNAP cards and EBT cards and welfare cards stop working almost instantaneously? You're going to have chaos, and then our enemies are going to pounce. Okay, it's just going to be pandemonium. It's going to be helter-skelter. Okay, Charles Manson to the millionth power. Okay, that's the phoenix rising to the ashes and the burning. Okay, that's the chaos. That's the golden ratio here. Now, by the way, what else do we get out of that 0.618? Well, if you turn that around, what do you got? 6 times 3 is 18. 18 over 6 is 3. 3 sixes. Count or calculate the number of the beast. 603 score and 6. Okay, and I'll say it again. Who was the original Rothschild? Okay, Meyer Rothschild. He had his 5 sons, but who was he palling around with? Saint Germain or Christian Rosenkreutz, or at least one of his manifestations. Okay, remember we talked about in length the other day. One of this other guy's manifestations was back in around the time of the European Enlightenment, like 300 years before. Okay, so when the Bible says the number of the beast, it's the number of a man. The number of this man is Saint Germain. Robert Christian, 18th degree, 1.618, 1618, 0.618, 18 over 6, 6 plus 6 plus 6. Count the number of the beast. Is it starting to become obvious now? Robert Christian, right here, Georgia Guidestones. Okay. Boxofsunglasses.com. God's Simple Salvation Plan's available. And we'll pick it up, Matthew 24 with additional commentary as it comes. Most Tuesdays and Thursdays right here. Archives, again. You can get through the website. But again, God's Simple Salvation Plan. If you're fortunate enough to be listening to this and it's absorbing and it's starting to make sense, it's probably the most important thing I can offer. Okay? It's the survival gear, the food, whatever, the ammunition, the guns, that's all great, but not going to do you much good when you read, the hills collapsing and the earthquakes and the volcanoes and the wrath of God. It's not going to do you a lot of good, so I don't bother with that stuff. Besides, there's any number of websites out there that are selling this stuff, but it doesn't work out too good for the people that abandon God and go on some kind of survival kick, survivalist. I'm talking about the elites, building these dumbs, literally dumbs, deep underground military bunkers, and as well as your other survivalists. But anyway, let's just kill it. The most important thing is God's Simple Salvation Plan. Hopefully back on Thursday, same time, Tuesday, Thursday, most Tuesdays and Thursdays, unless I got an obligation, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Good night and God bless.